Again, welcome everybody, and a joy to be here with you. The topic I'll be sharing tonight is from the Gita, and it's a section that Swamiji titles as See God in Everything. And I'll read this passage from the 6th chapter, 30th stanza, 30th to 32nd stanzas. Krishna speaking. One who beholds my presence everywhere, and all things dwelling equally in me, he never loses sight of me, nor I of him, through all eternity. The yogi finds security in me, who, though his days be rushed and action-filled, is anchored inwardly at rest in me, and worships me in every living form. That one, Arjuna, is the best of men, and truest he of yogis, whose heart feels the joys of all, their pains, their searing griefs, with equal care, as though they were his own. This is a very beautiful passage. It describes really the Ananda yogi. It's just a very interesting the way the Lord describes this. Though his days be rushed and action-filled, we're rushed and action-filled yogis at Ananda, because we do have very active lives and intense lives. And whether you're serving Ananda Sangha or serving in the corporate world and trying to see God everywhere, this is our life. It's not to run away and try to find God in a cave, because you can't run away to find God. You have to find God everywhere, and you have to see God everywhere, because God is everywhere. And that's the duty, in a way, as souls that's been given to us, is to see God in all creation, in all people, in every stone and tree, in everywhere we look. And this is a tall challenge, and it's not possible without meditation. It's not one or the other. Okay, I'm going to be an action yogi, and I don't need to meditate. But we do that, and we've seen this. I think all of us have gone through periods where maybe activity is more outward and intense, and we start to forget God, or stress and anxiety really start to overwhelm us. But when we have a daily sadhana, and then act from that center, then it's much easier to see God in all things, in all of our situations, even in the tests, even in restless activity, when we're really caught up in something we really need to do. So make this a real practice. Our masters, Swamiji, many saints have talked about it as practicing the presence of God. And that's just one part of it, is that it's difficult to see God out there where we are in the world if we cannot see God in here, in meditation, in our astral spine, in our inner self. When we are able to start seeing God and feeling God's presence in our hearts, then it's much, much easier to start seeing God and feeling God's presence wherever we look. So this is part of it, is awakening that presence of God within. But there's another part too that Krishna touches on that I have found to be very helpful. Swamiji talks about it when he talks about this reading. And he says, the yogi must strive to see in everything and everyone the Lord's hidden presence. See all things in relation to infinity. Think of God as playing hide and seek with him, so to speak, within every tree, every stone, every human being. He should view every tree, stone, and human being as part of that infinite reality out of which all things have come, in which the entire universe resides. Now, this isn't just a philosophy or a thought to see. It's not just intellectualizing that God is in everything, because that's completely different from experiencing and feeling God's presence in everything, in all of creation. And yeah, maybe it starts with the thought, oh yes, this is my duty and it's a reality, but that's just a thought. It's only an intellectualization of it. And the way that we can start to see God in everything is very simple. which is to start to look for God everywhere we look in all of creation. I'll share a couple of stories of my own experience of this. One is that when I lived at Ananda village, and my wife Maria and I would go for walks most evenings, and it's a very natural setting, and there's amazing natural stuff going on there, wild creatures, flowers, all kinds of happenings. But I'd see that some people would walk along and they would not see those things because they would be caught up in their own thoughts too much, and they weren't looking for God out there or for the wildness out there, or they'd be caught up in a conversation, which is not a bad thing with someone, but they'd be talking so loud that they wouldn't hear a fox crying off in the bushes or a bird singing. And so it's just a matter of looking. And when we would go for walks, it wasn't just, okay, let's go for a walk and get some exercise. It was always, what are we going to see today? And there was always a sense of anticipation and adventure about it. And so we would look when we walked. We would often be quiet, we wouldn't talk much, and we would look for whatever we could see. And we didn't always see wild, great things, but we much more often would see these wild creatures and animals in the forest, an owl up in a tree, a beautiful flower that was very rare, and just very simple, beautiful, natural things that we would not have seen if we weren't consciously looking for that. And so this is very important, is to be looking for God everywhere as a game of hide and seek. And so how do we do that? Again, it starts with trusting that God is everywhere, that God is hiding just behind each person, each experience that we have, and just to start praying to God, where are you? I want to see you, and just reveal yourself. But it also means looking with the eyes, with the heart, because it's more about looking with the heart in a way, because when the heart is right and our heart is with God, then it's much easier to feel God's presence and to start to see God's presence in other people, in other situations. And this is what happens, we see this where people do reflect back to us very often our own consciousness. Where if we're agitated, restless, maybe angry, then we somehow push the buttons of those people around us who are agitated and restless and angry, and they reflect it back to us, and it's almost like attracts like in that situation. But if we are calm and we are looking and we have God's presence, we start to see it. And it's like through people especially, where we start to attract people who have that presence and who have that awareness. I did this once when I was traveling, and I probably have shared this before, but for those who might not have heard the story, I was traveling and doing some retreats in the United States. And I was going through a difficult time of just intense chronic pain that made traveling very difficult, that made life very difficult. And I had just, a couple months previously, lost my wife to cancer, and she had left the body. And I was out there serving still. It was very important for me to continue giving to people. But I led a Kriya retreat on the east coast of the US. And so I was flying back, and I was in bad shape physically, and just with this pain and some nausea and dizziness. And I prayed to Divine Mother, because the plane I was getting on was going through Las Vegas, Nevada, on the way to Ananda village. And already there was people drinking and partying on the plane. And here I was coming from a Kriya retreat, and I was in a very vulnerable state. And I just prayed to Divine Mother, what are you putting me into here? Please, today I want to see you somewhere. Reveal yourself to me at some point. Just let me know that you exist, because it's so hard to see you in all this. Just give me a hint that you exist. And it was a very interesting trip. It was about a 9-hour trip with all the driving and flying. And 3 times she gave me little hints that she was there. 2 of them were just fun little hints. One of them was when I was going through the airport security. These security guys are big, gruff guys usually, who are very efficient and often hassle you for little things. And this one guy looked at my ID and looked at me and looked at my ID and he just looked at me and he just shook his head and he said, "What's your secret?" And I said, "What do you mean, what's my secret?" He said, you don't look this age. It's impossible. You look so much younger. And I felt so miserable with what I was dealing with. And I was able to tell him my secret is meditation and God. And that was one thing that happened. The next thing that happened was I got on the plane. And as soon as I got on the plane, there was a baby that started screaming and crying. And it was just right behind me. It was really, really close. And it was screaming so loud. And I looked back and you could tell by the cry that it was a newborn. It was maybe, I think it was just a week old. It was that fresh from the astral plane, really. But it was screaming the entire time for 5 hours straight. It never, ever stopped screaming. And you're on this closed-in plane and you're real close to it. The only time it ever stopped screaming, actually, because it did stop, was when I took a deep breath to start screaming again, because that's how much energy it was putting into its screams. And so I prayed to Divine Mother, not to stop this screaming. I prayed to her, "So I want to see you. Where are you? Are you in this situation?" And I started asking, why is this baby crying? Why is it screaming like this? Because it was a particular kind of cry. And I started listening and looking and paying attention, and I really truly felt that this baby was screaming because it had come from the astral plane, a beautiful place, and now it was on this weird ship of steel and metal with all these people, and some of them were getting ready to be partying in Las Vegas, and it was saying, where am I? I'm not home anymore. Lord, help me. I'm confused. I mean, this is not home. And I felt that was the screaming that it was doing. I really sincerely to this day feel that was true. And I really wanted to go back. I didn't, but I was very tempted to go back to that baby and say, don't stop screaming. Keep crying like this for the rest of your life, because your parents, your friends, they're going to try to make you forget where you've come from. They're going to dangle toys in front of you, little bright shiny objects to distract you and go ooh and ah and make funny faces at you and make you forget. And when you get older, they're going to buy you bigger bright shiny objects like cars and all kinds of things, trying to get you to distract you from remembering this reality that you're crying about. And don't ever forget, don't ever forget. And I felt Divine Mother was teaching me and telling me through that baby, don't forget, don't stop crying to Divine Mother. Scream, even if you have to Divine Mother. Don't stop crying for that freedom and that homeward memory that we all have of who and what we really are, because it's not a place. It's not just the astral plane somewhere. It's who and what we really are. And then finally, as the plane was landing, I was meditating in my seat, and as I was walking off, one of the stewards on the airplane, as I was leaving, said, "So were you meditating there?" It was just a sweet, beautiful assurance that God was seeing me and feeling my prayer, my meditation, my devotion, my receptivity. And so this would not have come if I hadn't prayed to Divine Mother. I want to see you. Where are you? You have to show me on this trip somehow, some way. Reveal yourself. And I was also, of course, I was looking that entire journey for God in everything, in any way that I could see. So this is part of it, but the other part of it is probably the more Christian part of it, and it relates to this reading that Swamiji shared from the Gita, which is to see God in all people, and not only just to see in a passive way and recognize God in others, but to give to God in others and serve God in others. And the way that Swamiji puts it in this way, he says that it is with this consciousness that one should love his neighbor, not for his merely human qualities, but for the divine reality residing within. One should love his neighbor for the fact that, in the greatness of God, he and his neighbor are one. By practicing God's presence in this way, one soon finds that conscious presence with him everywhere he goes, guiding him, protecting him, and filling him with bliss ineffable. And so this has to also be an active practice of practicing the presence of God. And it's not just looking, it's also serving and giving. Yoganandaji, one of the songs of Divine Mother that he would sing, was included the words, to take the dust of each one's feet, serving Mother where she sleeps, and to really serve others as God, even though that so many of the people around us sure don't look like God, and they sure don't reflect God's freedom and infinite presence, and they very often reflect very human qualities, good and bad, both in the full mixture of those things. But no matter the people that we're serving and giving to, which really in a way should be everyone we meet, everyone who crosses our paths, even if we don't have an interaction with them, simply to pray for the people, to pray for God in them. So we're not praying for a person, we're not giving to a person, we're giving to Divine Mother who is asleep in that person, through ignorance, through forgetfulness, because they don't remember where they came from, they've forgotten. This delusion tricks us so badly. And so when we can serve people actively in that way, to consciously try to wake the divine in them that is asleep, that is just one of the most powerful ways of awakening more and more the divine within us, and helping us to see the divine coming back to ourselves and seeing God in ourselves, seeing God in all. And so this practicing the presence of God, seeing God everywhere, seeing God in all, it is an extraordinary practice. For all devotees, for all yogis, I would say it's not optional. It's really, if we want to find freedom, it's actually essential, mandatory even, to make this a conscious practice, to look for God, to serve God in others, to practice the presence of God all day long if we can, but eventually, yes, all day long, every day as we can. So may we live in that presence, may we see that presence everywhere, may we pray to that presence, and may that divine presence free us from all the delusion, the one delusion, the only delusion that there is, which is that we are separate from God. That is the greatest delusion of all, and really the delusion behind all the other little delusions that we might have is that one single delusion that we are separate. So may we all find that oneness in divine union, in samadhi, bliss, which is the final union with God. May we find that in this lifetime through these practices and through their grace. So let's serve as instruments for that light of God flowing through us to all souls. Do a healing prayer, sending these waves of Om of Divine Mother to all of her children, again, taking the dust of our Mother's feet, serving that divinity that is asleep in all souls. So let's pray. Divine Mother, Thou art omnipresent, Thou art in all Thy children. Manifest Thy healing presence in all bodies, minds, and souls. And let's close with a prayer. Divine Mother, may Thy love shine forever on the sanctuary of our devotion, and may we be able to awaken Thy love in all hearts. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.